Hello, welcome to my webinar on gluten-free baking. My name is Alyssa Fields, and I'm a rookie baker. I'm definitely not an expert when it comes to gluten-free baking. I just do a lot of it. I intend for this webinar to be more of a conversational webinar. Definitely feel free to ask any questions at any time. And in addition, there are some resources available on the Weebly account that I submitted beforehand. Feel free, like I said, to answer questions at any time. This is going to be very conversational. And if you notice right here, feel free to hit that button anytime, pop a question, I'll stop, and go over whatever you want. So without further ado, let's get started on the presentation. So a lot of people ask, what is gluten? Gluten is a general protein. It's primarily a byproduct of wheat, barley, and rye. Gluten itself is a structure. It provides stretch and structure. Ooh, sorry. And it's more of a glue-like substance. So some obvious structures are going to be bread, oatmeal, that sort of thing. Pastas, baked goods. But gluten isn't always that obvious. So some hidden forms of gluten are, they don't just say ingredients. They don't just say wheat or barley or rye. Some of them will take their Latin forms. So anything that has triticum or vulgare or spelta, those are going to be references to wheat as well. Also, please note that I'm going to have these along with some other notes along the lines of that in the handout that I provided. Some other sneaky forms are going to be dressings, sauces, even medicines, ice creams, even makeup. Not that you should be eating that, but it's everywhere. So it's typically a thickening agent. So with it being less obvious, it definitely makes eating at home hard enough, but eating out especially difficult. So next question is, why do people avoid gluten? Well, if you have celiac disease, it's a small percentage of the population, but it's an autoimmune disorder of the digestive tract. So basically when gluten is consumed, it damages the lining of the stomach and basically makes it difficult for people to absorb the nutrients. It makes them very ill. Other people may have allergies or sensitivities or just a general preference for not eating them for whatever reason. And some things that people say it helps with the gluten-free diet, digestive issues, brain fog or general fogginess of the brain, and skin conditions like rashes and undesirable bumpy skin. For me, I personally don't eat gluten, but I have a problem with hives, extreme fatigue, and nausea. So before we knew this, I was breaking out in hives at least every other day, and bad. Itching. Sometimes I have to go home from work because I couldn't sit still. Benadryl barely did anything to touch it. So that's why I am. But what does a gluten-free kitchen look like? So the first thing you would want to know is, how severe is the allergy? Do you have celiac disease? If you have celiac disease, obviously consult with your doctor, but I would highly recommend making sure that you don't have any cross-contamination. I've heard horror stories about people who have maybe used a pan weeks, months ago. They made a glutinous cake and it's been washed and everything, but that trace still causes some pretty severe symptoms. So obviously, if you have celiac disease or you're cooking for someone celiac, make sure that you have brand new products that have never touched gluten. Otherwise, just for general allergies or sensitivities or just a general preference, you probably could just wipe some stuff off. Cross-contamination just may not be as important to you. But one thing, regardless of whatever your reasoning is for going gluten-free, is you're going to see in the gluten-free kitchen a lot of flour substitutes. So you can basically make a flour from anything. I know personally I have, I think, 11 different flours in my kitchen. I like to cook a lot and I like to experiment with new recipes, so it's probably a little more extreme than the average person. But definitely, if you're gluten-free, you're probably going to have a lot more flour options than your standard kitchen. So as I mentioned, there are a ton of substitutions. Substitutions can be in the form of potato flour, rice flour, coconut flour, almond flour, sorghum flour. I mean, there's so many. I've listed all those on the handout, so along with some additional explanations. But basically, the great thing is you can mix and match to try to get similar substitutions. So you want to take in consideration the texture of what you're trying to make, the general rise you're trying to achieve, and of course the taste. So, you definitely wouldn't want to use the same flour mixture for bread that you would for a cookie unless you like really bready cookies. So what to expect? Definitely one thing you want to expect is just going to have to do a lot more work, a lot more research on the products you're buying. So definitely reading those ingredients. Additionally, you're going to want to make sure that you are looking at your recipes, making sure that you don't have any gluten-related products. Also, you're going to be spending more money. These things cost more, but in general, it's probably worth whatever you're trying to avoid. Also, things are going to be different. Your bread may not taste just like regular bread, but you try to get a close substitute. And once you've had some bad gluten-free foods, you'll definitely appreciate a close second. So that's what you would expect in a gluten-free kitchen. So just jumping in, just looking at a basic flour recipe. I pulled this one from alittleinsanity.com, fantastic resource. And this makes upwards of 18 cups of flour. Now keep in mind, you can go and buy pre-made gluten-free flour. However, for instance, there's a company called Cup for Cup, and for 2 cups or 2 pounds of this, it's going to be about $18. So all of this costs about 14 or 15, and it makes 18 cups of flour. So definitely a bulk is the way to go. Also, just for ease, you're not going to be tempted to maybe use the wrong flour or not make something or go out to eat because you don't have the right ingredients. If you have this made, you have to make 18 cups. You should be good to go for a while. So as I mentioned, lots of basic kinds of flour. So brown rice flour, white rice flour, sweet rice flour, and tapioca flour, also known as tapioca starch, and xanthan gum. Xanthan gum is going to be that gluten substitute. So you use very small amounts of that, but that's what gives you some of that texture, that pull, elasticity, if you will. In general, just mix it all together. Mix it really, really well. You want to make sure that's well incorporated. And honestly, whenever I make it, I always shake it up a little bit more because it just sits, and I want to make sure. You're going to want, like I said, there's 18 cups. So you're going to want to make sure that you are using a device or a container that accommodates 18 cups. But if you store it in a large jar, then you should be good to go. This recipe is great for a lot of things. For baking crusts, for baking, I use it for pizza crust, cookies, breads. You can get more specific, but I think it's just nice to have a kind of a catch-all and not have to go for that cup for cup. Okay, so that's going to be part 1. Just showing what that can look like initially. So that's part 1. Please feel free to ask me questions about the basics. So I gave you the basic recipe, I gave you a little background. Part 2 is going to be about more specifics on